Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Sarah. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. We're wishing you a merry, and all the things happy and joyful and magical, and that you're getting some relaxing time, maybe some quality time with the family, with yourself, and just being present and reflecting as, the year comes to a close here, just what we have to be grateful for and what we're looking forward to as far as creating and experiencing life together. So thanks for letting us be a part of your day, whatever you're doing right now, wherever you're going. We appreciate you. Today, we have a fan favorite episode for you. It is all about normalizing going past the due date or guest date, as we often refer to it here in this space. So it's a great episode. We're excited for you to listen to it. A couple of announcements for you. If you are not signed up for our email newsletter, you should do that. Go to diahpodcast.com. On the main homepage there, if you scroll down, you'll see a place to sign up for that. There's also a link to it from our social media accounts, but do that because there's going to be stuff we're going to be sharing there in the upcoming weeks that will not be in other places. And I'm just kind of throwing this out there, that there's going to be some shifts as far as some social media things are concerned for doing it at home. That's all I'm going to say on that for now. I'm sorry to be cryptic, but just I would be signed up for our newsletter because some things are going to be shifting. We're going to be doing some really cool and exciting things in 2022. And so just go ahead and do that. And so that you're there and you're set up and you're getting the weekly emails from us and information and you'll be in the know. So go ahead and do that if you have not already. Okay, enjoy today's episode. See you later. Hey, I'm Sarah Bivens.
And I'm Matthew Bivens.
And this is the Doing It at Home podcast, the only podcast dedicated to empowering, loving, and honest conversations around home birth. What started as a fun way for us to document our own home birth journey has turned into a platform for sharing birth stories, resources, and education with the goal of empowering mamas and families to make the birth decisions that work best for them.
Plus, we get into the antics, breakdowns, and breakthroughs of our own experience of marriage and parenthood.
All right. You ready, babe?
Yep. Let's do it, mama.
Welcome to Doing It at Home, the podcast, the place where we help you believe in your success with home birth. Yes, so we believe in your success. Our goal here is that you believe in your success. By listening to these empowering stories, engaging in the community for support, and joining our weekly email newsletter for information, resources, etc. So how you can do that and engage further in the community, check out the show notes. There's links there where you can follow us on Instagram, join the private Facebook group, subscribe to the email newsletter on our website, and that way you will be all set up. You will be from all sides, just immersed in the birth junkie love, all things empowering home birth. And we've been at this for a minute. So we started recording Doing It at Home in spring of 2016 when we were pregnant with Maya and planning for our home birth after switching from a hospital birth plan. So we were about 18 weeks when we made that switch. And we just sat down with a handheld recorder in between us and talked about our process and talked about our journey and shared what was coming up for us, the fears, the doubts, the challenges, navigating everything, the logistics, the planning, you name it. It was all out on the table. And so if you've listened to those first few episodes, maybe you're new to the show and you checked those out and then popped in here to this one, or you're a longtime listener and you've been with us since then, you can tell a lot has changed since then, not just in recording quality and our experience, but in who we are and this space and this brand that has grown from a podcast 5 years ago to this online community, this organization, this mission that is all behind Doing It at Home and what we're up to. And we're so passionate about it, and it's just as relevant to us now as it was then. And we're really honored and humbled to be in this space and to have been able to grow Doing It at Home to be what it is now, one of the top home birth resources out there. Like, that's us. And that's crazy. And it's awesome and it's beautiful and it's magical. So you are a part of that right now just by listening to this. This could be your first episode or your 100th. And we thank you for being a part of this mission with us. Make sure you hit subscribe if you have not already on whatever device you are listening to. That way you'll get notifications every time a new episode is out. Make sure you're following us on all the channels, join the private Facebook group, subscribe to the email newsletter. That way you will be set up. You will be fully immersed in all things empowered home birth. So today's episode is titled Normalizing Going Past Due Date, Natural Induction at 42 and a half weeks with Jessica Prigmore. And in this episode, we talk about going past the due date, induction methods, resuscitation after birth, pitocin after birth, an occult cord, a large birth team, hiring a doula, a hospital birth, as well as dual care. So those are some of the themes and topics you can expect to hear about. And one of those big ones, as I mentioned, is going past the due date. So what happens if you go past your due date? Well, that depends on a number of factors, actually. But one thing that we have found helpful personally when it comes to the term due date is, first of all, we like guess date. That just resonates more with us because it's not an exact certainty, this date that's put out there of when baby will arrive. And that due date or guess date and how it comes about and how it unfolds is really just an area of variation of normal in the birth world. And that actually a very small percentage of babies arrive on the projected, again, quote, due date. And so today's guest, Jessica, shares her journey of her second pregnancy and birth and what influenced her to shift from a hospital plan like she had with her first birth to a home birth plan with her second. So really awesome conversation. Again, if you are in that due date quagmire, if you are coming up on your due date or guess date, or if you're just unpacking that concept for yourself as you plan for your pregnancy and your birth, this is a really great one for that. So quick word from our sponsor, and then we will hop into the episode. Hi, Jessica. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hi, Sarah and Matthew. I'm great. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're excited as well. So thank you so much for joining us on Doing It at Home and spending this time with us. We appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. So Jessica, just because I feel like so many moms will be able to relate to your current situation right now, will you just share what that is first? Because I am so tickled by it and find it awesome. And so just tell us what you're doing right now.
Well, as everybody knows, a lot of us are home with tiny children. Mm-hmm. So I am about a block from my house, hiding in the car, talking to you guys right as we were about to start recording. My 4-year-old ran up to the car. She's just in her underwear and she's like, I want to get in with you. So I said, okay, tell daddy, go watch a movie and I will be back. So
yes,
just hiding out.
I love that.
That's so funny.
Because there's someone listening right now who's like, I'm doing that right now, but I'm not being interviewed, but I'm just hiding in my car around the corner listening to this. So for whoever that is, you are seen, you are understood.
It's so funny because cars and closets, they end up being great hiding spaces, but they're also great recording spaces as well.
They are. So
it kind of works out.
It does. But they're also places where kids go to find you. They know to go there.
So maybe they aren't the best hiding places.
So anyways.
And I know, inevitably my husband might call me and be like, where are you?
That's great. Okay, so tell us a little bit about that crazy family of yours.
So I'm Jessica. My husband's name is also Matthew. And we have 2 children, Grace, who just turned 4, and Jack, who just turned 6 months today. We live in Northern California. I'm a East Coast transplant from here. I'm actually an active duty military member with the United States Air Force, and I got stationed here about 7 years ago. I've been serving for 14 years, and I started off my career overseas. I was in England for 2 years, in Spain for 3 years, in my early 20s as a jet engine mechanic. That was super fun. And then I switched over into more of an administrative job with recruiting and retention. And that brought me to California, where I met my husband. And from there, when we were ready to, get married and put down roots, I put my recruiting hat on and convince my mother and my sisters to move out here and live nearby. Trying to kind of just building my support network. It all worked out. My mom got a great job at a local hospital. My sisters are in the beauty industry, so they are really happy to be here with me. And we've built a really nice little life here where I have my mother and sisters 30 minutes on one side of me and my in-laws on the other side of me 30 minutes in the opposite direction. So that's us in a nutshell.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's super cool.
That's yeah, that's great. And thank you for your service. And I'm curious how, because I have no idea military life, being the spouse of someone in the military or being in the military yourself, and then just how that unfolds with family life and, becoming a mother. So for those who that's going to connect with, or, who just feel that greater sense of belonging and feeling heard and understood by now hearing you say that, I love bringing that to this space.
Yeah, this is a great area for military too. We have 2 big Air Force bases nearby. So yeah.
Very cool. Okay. So I'm wondering if the recruiting hat comes into play at all during your birth story or planning and process for it, because you had some things change up and, things just, go in a different direction, but I'll let you tell that. So how about just give a little bit of backstory into how home birth became something you thought about and where and how, and because you had a home birth for your second and a hospital for your first. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think probably the best place to start with my story to home birth is to start with talking about my mother, because she had a huge influence over me really early on when it came to just birth in general. So she was a young mom. I'm the oldest of 5 children. She had us all pretty young, I would say. She was 17 when she had me, 19 when she had my brother, and then early 20s for her third, and then my fourth, and then so on. She only had one surprise later on at 40 with my last sister, who I was 23 at the time when she was born. So it was just really cool. But yeah, in the 80s, I don't think epidurals were as prevalent. C-sections did happen, but like it was really normal to go past your due date. There just wasn't as much as an emphasis on intervention and inductions, at least from my mother's experience. So she carried me and my brother both well past our due dates, and it just was not a big deal. So I think I was like 15 days overdue, and my brother was 12 or 13 days overdue. And she had successful vaginal natural births in the hospital. She wasn't wild about her experiences with that specific doctor that she delivered with. He gave her kind of an episiotomy with like no surprise. She totally did not expect that with both my brother and I. So when she got pregnant with my sister, she decided to find more of a holistic doctor to work with. And at that time, I was 5 and my brother was 4. Or I'm sorry, I was 6 and my brother was 5 when she had my sister. And I remember the birth so vividly. I was present for it. And I thought that was totally normal in my, as a kid. We hopped in the car early in the morning on Christmas Day with my grandparents lived right next to us. So we all just hopped in the minivan and like brought the 90s style camcorder and documented the whole thing. And my mom labored in the hospital with my dad for probably 4 or 5 hours. It was a smooth process for her. And then right at the end, when she was getting in the pushing stage, my brother and I were allowed to come into the room and watch the whole process. And then when my sister was born, our doctor let my brother and I cut the cord, and we were just there for the whole thing. And it was just like, okay, this is what you do as a family. You have babies. And so, flash forward to four years later, my fourth sister, I'm almost 11. And again, like we go and she goes into labor, normal labor, really fast. But at that time, my dad was like, okay, everything's good. You're healthy. I'm going to take the kids home. We'll stay the night at the house and then I'll come back for you in the morning. But me being, 11 years old, I was like, can I stay with you, Mom? And the hospital was fine with me staying the night with her. So I felt like, I got that bonding experience with my baby sister. I stayed up with her. I helped my mom. And it just, while it wasn't a home setting, it just really was normalized that this is what you do as a family. So I think that's kind of where everything started for me. It was like, oh, and then later on, as I got older, I thought, oh, not everybody does this.
Yeah. Not everyone just, gosh, my brain just stopped on me for a second, but hops in the minivan and like, we're going to a birth, like pack it in.
Yeah. So yes, kind of that was the beginning. And so when I got pregnant with my daughter, it just seemed like, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to do what my mom did, go to the hospital and have a natural birth and no big deal. But that was, I get research oriented with everything. And that's when I started, do my research for myself to prep. And of course, just like many other mothers in today's age, I watched The Business of Being Born, and said, oh my God, I had no idea that I could be, all these options. There's all these interventions. There's all these choices that I need to make for myself. And so it's important to note that, like, so I am a military member, and I go to a military hospital, and military hospitals are great. They have wonderful models of care, but there is this underlying kind of undertone of compliance because, you've got a provider that's most likely a military member, like a captain or a major or lieutenant colonel. And a lot of times they're in uniform. And if I'm a junior member and I go see them, like, I want to get along with, I want to go with the flow. I don't want to shake things up. That's just the mentality that you're taught in the military is, compliance and follow the chain of command and don't break the rules. So they kind of have that model of care where it's like, okay, this is what you're going to do, not here are your options. And they did have some civilian midwives, which they were amazing. And the doctors there were amazing too. Like, there wasn't really anything that I could necessarily pick out that was bad. It just, I think when you're especially like younger military members, you can kind of feel like, oh, I have to do this because they're telling me to do this. But that's the same for, civilian hospitals too. You're thinking, I'm just going to do what the doctor's telling me to do. And that wasn't my mentality from the beginning. So immediately I was kind of going against the grain of like, I don't know about that test. I don't know about this. And my husband was very nervous about birth in general. He had no exposure like I did. So really the whole process became a lot about educating him on my experiences with birth and letting him know, like, this is my plan. At that point, I decided, you know what, I think we need a doula. I think we need my mom. I think these are the people that we need present at my first birth, just to support us and support me and support you so that we're not, scared of the hospital, so to speak. And my whole plan was, when I worked with my doula, was to just bring as much home to the hospital as possible. The type of insurance I have would not cover a home birth the way that I would want it to be. And so we were just like, okay, we're going to do this. And we didn't know what to expect with our first birth. So, night of that birth, it was like a huge rainstorm, windy. And, I think babies just love to come in that type of environment, because when we got to the hospital with my daughter, it was like, there were so many people having babies that night. And I think that was a great blessing in disguise for me, because the staff was so overwhelmed with everything that was going on. I think there was an emergency C-section. Somebody else was like, get me an epidural. Like, there was just all kinds of stuff going on. So when I walked in, my water had already broke. I was in full blown active labor. I was, I ended up being dilated about 4 or 5 centimeters. And I was like, leave me alone. Don't touch me. I'm getting in the shower. They kind of just let me do my thing for the most part.
Nice.
And my doula was there, and she shut the lights off, got these like cool little twinkle candles and aromatherapy and music. And she was giving me counter pressure in the shower. And my mom and my husband, I think they benefited from having her with us in the hospital setting even more than I did, because they just were kind of like, the staff would come in and be like, we need to monitor you. You have to get back in bed. You have to stay still so we can monitor everything. And they were like, just let her do her thing. We can do intermittent monitoring. It'll be okay. So my labor was pretty smooth. I labored for about 6-7 hours. They wanted to check me a couple times. I let them check me. At one point, it was like the doctor came in and he was like, okay, I need to check you. And so he checked me and then he said, all right, you're about a 6. This will be about another 5 hours, then baby should be out. And I was like, what? No, I'm not. It's not going to be that long. And my mom was trying to assume. She's like, he's just joking. He's just joking, Jess. Like, the baby's going to be here a lot sooner. And the baby did come an hour later. So
wow.
It's just
nice.
like, no, dilation is not an indicator, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it's like a turkey roasting, like, and how much.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, overall, birth at the hospital was kind of, standard issue, fine. I was really ready to get out of there almost immediately after birth, but I did stay a full night. She was born at like 4:13 in the morning. Oddly enough, it's the same time my son was born at the exact same time, so I birthed babies in the night.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, so we got home, and I just felt like so much more at ease at home. And in general, I'm just not a hospital person. I don't like going. I'm not sick. I don't want to be there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
makes
so
sense.
that's the first birth.
Before we jump into number 2, I thought that was so interesting, you talking about your military experience in the military hospital and how it almost creates this like the compliance piece. Like I hadn't heard that before, and that's pretty fascinating, because I imagine speaking up for yourself and advocating for yourself is even more challenging, because it's not just the doctor that is the authority, it's the military, and like you mentioned, chain of command. And so for you, what helped you to be able to say yes to things or no to things, or just feel like you had more power, more of a voice, more control in that situation?
Well, so I would say that my personality to begin with is I do challenge the status quo a little bit more, probably more than I should sometimes. But just the research, honestly, like just doing the research on my own, reading stuff about, I really did. My goal in the whole process was to try to avoid interventions and avoid a C-section and avoid all the things that could happen to me. And so what really, really helped was meeting the doula that I ended up becoming really good friends with, because she had a good presence on the military base. And I think that really helped. She kind of had a hit. She's like, okay, well, they're going to probably want you to do this. They're going to want you to do that. So just kind of connecting with her. She's a military spouse. And her and I brainstorming on what kind of language we would use when we felt pressured. I'll use an example. I went overdue with my daughter. It was like I was 40 weeks and 3 days, and they were like, hey, okay, so we're going to schedule your induction for 41 weeks. And I said, no, you're not, because my mom carried all her babies late. So I think I'm probably going to go to 42. There's a good chance. I think just being armed with the information helped me say no. So even though it did make me really uncomfortable, I had a non-stress test at around 41 and 5, and we had a really ominous sit down with a resident physician who was like telling, my husband's there. My husband went to every appointment. He was so involved and so great, so supportive, but he was nervous. And this doctor is like, I just want to explain to you that, post-term babies, there's a high risk of mortality, and you need to be really careful. It was just like this really ominous conversation. And I wasn't even post-term. And the non-stress test that they did showed that baby was fine. I was fine. Placenta was fine. Like everything was just moving along as it should. I just had no signs of labor, and my body just wasn't ready. And I just kind of would keep telling them, like, I think baby's going to come soon. It actually happened that I finally kind of did concede and said, okay, I will put an induction on the schedule for 42 weeks and 1 day, just to kind of make everybody feel, copacetic.
Yeah.
But I was like, that the night before, I still in my mind was like, I'm not going. I'm just not going to go. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
So I like took a bath, and I was like rubbing my shaving my legs and like talking to the baby. And I was like, okay, come on, baby. Like this is our last chance to do it on our own. Come on. And I felt that pop of the water. Like as it was cool. It was like, as I was talking to her. So
wow, that's
cool. It worked out. Like we went into labor. I went into labor that night and all on my own. And my body was just doing a lot of prep, like prodromal labor, for 2 weeks, just all the things. It was just a little slower for me.
In your time, in her time.
Yeah.
I just think it's valuable for people to hear how you prepared yourself and equipped yourself to be able to, stand up for yourself and say no to things. And, because other people are going to face similar things, whether it's going to be a suggested C-section or a suggested episiotomy or a suggested induction date, all of those things. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, post-term is not post-term until you're past 42. So I don't think a lot of people realize that. I think they focus on the 40-week mark.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about second pregnancy.
Yeah, so second baby, we planned this baby. We did not plan my daughter, so this was kind of cool. We planned him. So I was tracking my cycle. So we got pregnant, and I actually had, immediately reached out to the same doula, because we had become friends at that point. And I said, I'm pregnant, and I'm going to start whispering home birth to my husband in his ear while he sleeps.
Oh, that's funny.
Subliminal messaging.
I did. Yeah. And it's interesting because this was pre-COVID, I was already kind of looking at the alternative routes, but I knew that I was going to get a dual care. Like I was going to, go to the hospital and, get a couple of tests done and just kind of see what the vibe was there, because, it was 3 years later, the staff changes, people move around in the military. So I wanted to kind of see, okay, who's there? Unfortunately, my favorite midwife that I was trying to get had already moved away. So I didn't know any of the staff, and already I was starting to feel like, what are my other options? So COVID kicked off right around, I think I was like around 15 or 16 weeks pregnant. And that was when hospital policies started to change. And just like many others, we start finding out, oh, I can only have my husband there, or, one support person. I can't have my doula. I can't have my mom. That just really shook me, because I feel like I'm really empowered when I'm surrounded by women. So that got me thinking, like, okay, I need to reevaluate this. I had a conversation with my husband, and we started talking about what could we do. One thing I even thought about was, I'm like, I'm probably going to have a fast labor. Like maybe we can just, go to the hospital that's 5 minutes away. They have a birth center there. Maybe they'll take me. Like if I'm like, I'm in labor, I can't make it to the base.
Yeah.
Because the base, the base is an hour, almost an hour away.
Okay.
So that was like one little thought that we had. But once COVID was happening and we were just in total lockdown, I got on Facebook. I was like, home birth. And I found a midwifery practice locally, and immediately booked a consult with them. And it was over Zoom at the time. And I just told my husband, like, look, I want to explore this. Like, let's just see what this looks like. And he had a kind of a look of horror. He's like, well, where are you going to have this baby? And in our living room? And I'm like, maybe. It's just like, what is happening? But he actually was kind of like, okay, I'm not too surprised. This is my wife. She's out of the box and everything. And he kind of just went with it, which surprised me. And then I found out later, down the road, like probably like we're 20 to 25 weeks pregnant. And I'm like, I'm really happy that you are so open to this, Matt. I'm really like, I really appreciate you supporting me. And he casually was like, oh yeah, well, there's this, he's an attorney. So he's like, well, I follow this attorney on Twitter. And he talked about his wife, they had home birth. So if he's doing it, I guess it's fine.
Hey, that's cool.
So, that was what made him comfortable, was that he had, a male colleague that had done it. So I think that's important for men, that to maybe find, another guy that they respect, that they can talk about it with, because of him being able to see that guy and see his experiences, he kind of felt like it was already normalized.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's so important for men and partners to be able to hear accounts from other partners, and hear how they work through their fears, because, we have all sorts of fears and things. And a lot of times we don't want to express them to the mom, to the birthing person, because we don't want to pass our fears onto them. And we want to be strong and supportive. And yet, if we don't work through our own stuff, it's going to show up in some way. So I think it's great that he was able to, become comfortable and get behind the idea. However it happened, he was able to get there. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And he feels kind of the same way I do. He feels really supported, by my mom and her experiences, and our doula, who we love. And he's just like, well, if they're going to be there and I'm not going to be on my own with you, I feel really good about that. And then he started thinking about the bed, and he's like, oh, I get to sleep in my own bed. I don't have to sleep on that crappy sofa. Yeah. So he was really, really looking forward to that part.
Can you remember what was his top fear, or the biggest thing that was making him feel uncomfortable with home birth?
Yeah, you know what? He was like, the mess. What if, who's going to do this mess cleanup? And what else? Oh, he was worried about, like, he had that what if something goes wrong mentality that many people have, and that just kind of that preconceived notion of like, it's not safe. And so the midwives in our consultation did a great job of explaining safety precautions. We listened to a couple podcasts with subject matter experts on what if something goes wrong. And just kind of, he is an analyzer. Like he did look at all the data with me. So once we got all of that done, he felt good. And also we do live right around the corner from a hospital. We actually, we've had a scary situation with our daughter who is asthmatic, where she got sick and she was having a really severe asthma attack, where he had to rush her to the hospital because she could not breathe and her oxygen was low. And because we're so close, that really put him at ease. Like, okay, if I can get my daughter to the hospital when she's not breathing, we can get a baby to the hospital that's not breathing.
I understand that, because we had a similar, we have a hospital close by us. And so that was one of the big things that alleviated a lot of my fear was, okay, this hospital is just 3 miles away. And so if anything does happen, we can get over there within, just a few minutes. So I can understand where he's coming from on that.
Yeah, definitely. So back to my midwifery care. They were getting really busy during this time. All of a sudden, home birth became the cool kids in town with COVID. So I was really lucky to be able to get a spot with them for August, September, which was when I was planning to have the baby. But I had an interesting thing where the hospital initially had given me my due date or guest date. And I knew when I was ovulating, I knew when we conceived, and it was just off. Like, I'm like, this is off by like 4 or 5 days. And I know my history. I'm going to go past this date. And so I talked to the midwives and I was like, I really feel like I want to go with a later date. I don't think that this is accurate. And they were totally comfortable with that too. So we pushed out my date to, about 5 days later. And that made me feel more at ease, like, because I'm like, come on, guys, like, I need as much time as possible.
Yeah.
especially in California. I know that we're restricted by certain laws when it comes to birthing. So we did that, and then they would come to the house. They were, we were still practicing COVID distancing, masking, and everything. But they would come and they would check me out. I felt really lucky that they, did some of our visits virtual, but did a lot of our visits in person too, despite the state of the world. But my pregnancy was pretty normal. We just kind of just trucked along. I will say, it was lonely. Just like everybody else has been feeling this past year, it was lonely. It was like, I couldn't connect with any new moms. I couldn't go to the yoga. I couldn't go to the, we had a centering group that thought I was going to do. So just try to keep ourselves busy. I stayed active in my backyard. I'm really into woodworking and like building things. So I built my daughter a playground.
Oh, that is
in the garden.
awesome.
Like, yeah, we were home. So it's like, what are we going to do? So I built myself a standing desk. Like, I just did all these things to keep myself active as I could and as busy as I could, waiting for baby and, also working. We all shifted to telework, and it was really kind of a challenge for the military that loves to have eyes on everything. We're like all staying home and getting the mission done from the house. So let's see where I'm at here. Okay, so once again, I waved at my due date as it passed me by, as I expected.
That's a funny visual. Just like, oh, see you later. Like you're passing an exit on the highway.
Yeah, it just was not even like, okay, whatever. I just I didn't even blink. I was experiencing Braxton Hicks, was doing a lot of walking and just kind of being like, okay, what are we going to do this time? The whole process really felt super similar to my first, where once I was past 40, I started getting the prodromal labor at night. And that's kind of where I would just lay on the couch and binge watch movies and Netflix and just have these really strong waves, and for 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes, and then they just fizzled out. So I immediately knew, okay, this is just maybe what my body does. Who knows with the third? It probably will be a curveball, but that was what was happening. I was drinking a ton of red raspberry leaf tea. I was doing date smoothies. I was just kind of getting my body and my mind prepped for labor. But I did kind of start to get a little bit anxious by the, kind of what the 2-week mark was that the hospital originally had given me, because in my mind I was thinking, okay, if I was getting care at the hospital, this would be the point where they're like, you need to induce, you need to induce, you need to induce. And so I wanted to start trying some induction things on my own. So, and I still had about four days to play with before we absolutely needed to intervene. And the midwives were like, okay, what do you want to eat? They're so cool. They're just like, you're in charge, baby's safe, baby's fine, you're fine. What do you want to do? And I said, okay, I think I want to maybe try castor oil. So we made a tentative plan on September 4th, which was about a week and a half past the due date, to do a cervical check, to see where I'm at, maybe a sweep, and do castor oil. But plans changed because another mama that they were caring for went into labor that day. And so I said, no, I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to see what happens with this labor. I don't want to, there's the practice has 3 midwives and a student midwife. And I just wanted to make sure that if I could have them well rested and, ready to go at my birth, I was going to have it go that way if possible. So they said, okay, just hold off on the castor oil. We're at this other birth. We'll let you know. And that birth went really long for that mother. It went over 24 hours. She ended up transferring. She was a first-time mother. So I just had to wait, So Saturday rolled around and, midwife contacted me and said, hey, so how are you feeling? What do you want to do? And I said, well, if you guys are okay with it, I think I'll try the castor oil on Sunday. And she said, okay. She said, but I'm going to send another midwife over to you. She's semi-retired. She actually was the midwife that stood up the practice. She said, she's going to come over and do just a check on you, just to do a sweep if you want to do that. I said, sounds great. Let's do a sweep. Let's try to get things moving. So when she came over on Saturday, I'm not even kidding you. Like, I just felt like I was meeting the West Coast Ina May. She was so cool. She had like long, flowing gray hair. And she was just like, oh, honey, you're back in the day, people went to 43 weeks all the time. No big deal. You're fine. Just but let's just see where you're at. We'll get things moving. She was just really cool. I just felt like I was meeting like a birth celebrity, just with all, and then I ended up looking at her bio on the website. And she just has so much experience, advocates for so much, just laws to change, all kinds of things. I could go on and on and on about her. But so she checked me, she did a little sweep. She said, oh, you're like, you're kind of a stretchy too. So things are moving, things are happening. It's just not yet. Okay. So I waited the next day and still nothing. So I talked to them again and they said, okay, let's do the castor oil shake. Let us know. And this castor oil shake was actually delicious. The recipe they gave me was really good.
That's cool. I think that's one of the first times I've ever heard anything involving castor oil and tasting good.
Do you remember how they made it?
Yeah. Peanut butter chocolate ice cream.
Okay.
A banana.
I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time when she said that, I was like, okay, sounds good. My daughter had a scoop. I put it in the blender, a banana, and then some milk and some ice. And she said, so this is where I made the mistake. She said, like, I think 4 ounces of castor oil. And I was like, I'm going to do 2 and see what my body does. And so she said, go big or go home kind of with the castor oil, which I drank it. I was nervous. I've heard horror stories about castor oil. I've heard nothing happening. And then I've heard like labors happening. And so I got a bunch of Gatorade. I hydrated. I drank this shake in the afternoon, and it just didn't do it. It didn't kick labor in. It did like do all the things that it does, where it gets your gastrointestinal parts moving, but labor just didn't happen. So Monday rolls around, and once again, at this point, my husband's like, "All right, are we going to do this or what?" He's like, he's got the birth tub out. He's just like in go mode. And
poor guy.
He's ready to go.
Yeah.
He's looking at, every moment, everybody is just like, I've learned my lesson. Like, don't give anybody my due date because
yeah, that's funny.
My mom is in go mode. She's like, I've requested off work. And, like my mother-in-law, actually, I invited her to the birth too. And she bought all this food from Costco that had gone bad. And like, sorry guys, baby's just not here yet. So my real, like my legit cutoff was Tuesday night at midnight. That was when the midwives were going to say, you're just going to have to, legally, we really need to have you go to the hospital. And so my midwife texted me at Monday morning and she said, okay, Jess, you've got an appointment with an acupuncturist at 11. She's wonderful. She's going to do some stuff on you. And then we're going to come over in the afternoon and we're going to do a bunch of stuff. And I didn't know exactly what we were going to do, but I was just really open. I always told them, like, you guys, I'll try anything to get this baby out at this point. You know, I'm very pregnant and very ready. A side note was that we were also having all these wildfires in California, and the smoke outside was just brutal. Like, you really just couldn't go outside and walk around. It was, you know, my daughter's asthmatic. I just didn't feel comfortable being as pregnant as I was with her walking around. So we just kind of were getting a little stir crazy in the house. At one point I went to a mall just to walk and be inside. And, you know, that was like, oh my gosh. Anyways, yeah, so it's smoky. It's like post-apocalyptic world with all the skies are orange. I go to this wonderful acupuncturist. I'd never had acupuncture before. So it's my first experience, and gets a lot of clients from this midwifery practice, and she was really cool. She was like, just relax, and we're going to do some different pressure points. But what she did that was really cool, that I learned about, was she placed these ear seeds. They're called ear seeds in my ear. So she taped them in and left them in. And she said, you know, if you want to keep them in, you can, but if they bother you, take them out. But what she told me I could do was I could apply pressure when I'm having a contraction, or when I'm wanting to stimulate labor in a certain point in my ear that kind of helps the abdomen and the uterus respond. So I said, okay, that's interesting. So when I left that appointment and I came home and midwives came over, the first thing they did was a non-stress test where we listened to baby for a while. And they said, okay, just let us know if you have a wave or have a contraction. And I thought, well, maybe this will be a good point to try to stimulate baby to listen. And I pressed on the ear seeds while we're doing the non-stress test. And it worked. Like, it caused me to have a wave, by putting pressure on my ear.
Can you describe
and that was a really cool.
Can you describe those ear seeds real quick? Like what?
It's like, so they do the needle, right. She did the needle for the acupuncture, and then she removed the needle, after my session was over, and replaced it with a tiny little bead and just taped it in. Remain
inside your ear?
Just like like within the ear itself. Like she put like three different ones, and I can't remember which one she told me to press for uterine stimulation. But yeah, it was cool. It
wow.
was
so
like,
just
really,
on the inside of like the lobe, not in your ear canal.
Not in the ear canal. No,
okay.
Just like
hanging out in there.
Like I think it was like in the cartilage, up top was where I was told to press.
That's
so
wild. That's
it was
cool.
just a cool, like, holistic approach to things that I never even considered.
For sure.
And the midwives, it was their first, acupuncture thing with the ear seeds too. So like, this is cool. So
you pressed it and it worked.
To different methods. Yeah. So they did non-stress testing. Baby was good. Sounded great. And then that's when we rolled up our sleeves and the real work began, because the plan was to get labor going that night or the next day. So we made a plan. We talked about what I was comfortable with doing, and I was really open to whatever they wanted to try. My midwife said, okay, let's do a shake. Let's do a pastoral shake again. And then let's start doing some sweeps, stretches and sweeps on your cervix, and then some nipple stimulation. And then we're going to, in between those sessions, we'll do some herbs, some tinctures that they had. And we started around 2 p.m. in the afternoon. I did my shake. And then we did we did the stretches and sweeps. We did about 3 stretch and sweeps throughout a 6-hour period. And in between that, she would put primrose oil in my cervix just to kind of get things ripened and try to get things stimulated. And then I would do nipple stim with my breast pump. I did both, both sides at the same time, 10 minutes on, 5 minutes off. I did about 3 hours of nipple stimulation and would drink herbs in between. So I would, induction in general, it did feel it was a little invasive. Like I'm getting stretched, I'm getting pumped, I'm pumping my breast and everything, but I still felt good. Like I was getting some waves, they weren't consistent, but I felt like I was doing it on my terms.
Right.
And I was in my home, and I was with experts that, have done this before. But they were honest with me. They were like, you know what, we don't have to do this that often. Typically labor is spontaneous by this point. So we're sorry that we have to do this.
Yeah.
But it was good. The whole experience was good. My mom had my daughter all day. She had taken her the night before just to give us some time. And she asked me, you want me to bring Grace home? What do you want me to do? I said, go ahead and bring her home. Like, I have a feeling that if labor does kick in, it's going to be at night. We'll put her to bed. My mom came over and she saw what was going down. The midwives had they call it their labor aprons. Like they say, good things happen when you wear an apron. You're either baking cookies or you're having a baby.
Nice.
And
I like that.
so they were busy. They had their business suits on, so to speak, and were busy with me. And my mom's like, I think I'm going to stay the night if that's okay with you, just in case. So I was like, okay, Mom, sounds good. So we had a good meal. We were making our way through Friends on HBO, just kind of hanging out. And midwives stuck around. The midwife student was there. She was doing homework. And my main midwife, she was just kind of napping and hanging out. And nothing really happened till it was about 9:30 at night, and nothing was really happening. So they asked, it was up to me. They said, what do you want to do? You want us to stick around? What do you want to try some other things? And I said, you know what? I think at this point, I think we should just all go to bed. You guys go home. We'll go to bed. And if something happens, I'll call you. So they were like, cool, sounds good. You guys do your thing. We're right around the corner. All the midwives live pretty close. So I think the midwife that wasn't there lived about 20 minutes away, and then everybody else was about 15 minutes. So everybody went home. We got tucked into bed. I went on the couch. I just could not sleep in our bed. So I was on the couch. And yeah, I went to sleep. I woke up around, I want to say midnight, 12:30, with some pretty strong cramps that felt like I needed to go to the bathroom. So I got up, went to the bathroom, and it's like, oh, okay, that's the castor oil or the herbs or something. That doesn't feel good. And got up and just was kind of moseying around my house for a couple minutes. And then I felt my first big one where I was like, oh, okay, something's happening. And I wanted to, I don't know, I had this feeling of like, I just wanted to be alone, and I just wanted to be like in the dark. So for probably about a half hour, I was just walking around, just breathing, and like, wasn't really timing my contractions or anything. I just was like, okay, cool. Labor's happening. This is great. And then I called my doula because she lived about 45 minutes away, and I knew that she was probably sleeping. So I called her up and I said, hey, Angie, I'm in labor. Do you want to come over? What do you want to do? And she said, yep, I will come right over. And this was her first home birth. So we were just being kind of home birth junkies about it, because
cool.
She hadn't doulaed at a water birth, and she hadn't doulaed at a home birth yet. She'd just been in the hospital. And she also was not practicing much because of COVID. So she couldn't go to the hospital. So she was in withdrawals, so to speak. So she's like, okay, I'll be right over. I will be right over. And we had all these plans. Like, we were going to do, the rebozo. We were going to do walking. We're going to walk out in my backyard and like hang from a tree. Like, I don't know. We had all these plans, but it didn't work out like that because things got serious really fast.
That's funny.
So when I was on the phone with her, I was trying to be quiet because I didn't want to wake up my mom. I didn't want to wake anybody up. In my labor brain, I was like, everybody just needs to sleep. I'll just labor through the night. I'll take a shower, I'll just do my thing. And my mom woke up and I'm like waving at her in the hallway. I'm like, Mom, go back to sleep. It's fine. And then I had this huge contraction. I'm like, oh. Like, I'm like doubled over at the wall. And she's like, I'm gonna stay awake.
Yeah.
And she said, did you call? She's like, I heard you on the phone. Who did you call? And I said, I called my doula. And she's like, well, did you call the midwife yet? I said, no, not yet. It's fine. And then another one. Like, I have another one. And so I went into the bedroom. My husband's sleeping, and I wake him up. And I'm like, hey, go sleep in the guest room. I'm just gonna labor in here. I'm in labor, and go get my daughter and move her to the other side of the house so we don't wake her up. And you just sleep. You just go back to sleep. He's like, no.
Yeah.
Like, I'm up now.
Yeah, we're all awake. We've been waiting for this.
Yeah.
And that was like around 1:30, and at that point, they're like, I texted my midwife and said, hey, things are happening. And she said, do you want me to come over? And then at some point in between, like me texting her, I had another big contraction, and then like suddenly it was like, now I can't even text. So my husband took the phone and he called her or texted her, and he was like, you guys need to come over. She's in full blown labor and she's just in denial. So I had my yoga ball positioned next to the bed, and I was leaning over my bed. So I was just kind of like rotating my hips and breathing through. And then I also started to get really nauseous and started to have that sensation of feeling like I needed to throw up. But so I just wanted a bowl next to me. So I'm like, get me a bowl, and turn my music on and turn the lights off. And I just got into this like cat like dark room in the corner, nobody touch me mode in labor. And I just stayed there for about 2 hours, just on the ball. Like, no, I don't want to touch anything. I don't want anybody touching me except for my doula, who got there and said, what, you want some back pressure? So she just had her fist on my back, and she was, poor thing, she was like cramped up behind me, leaning against the wall, just like, crisscross applesauce, pressing on my back for about 2-3 hours. And her and my mom would take turns. At some point, I remember the midwives shuffled in, and they were just so quiet and respectful of the space, and they were checking out the baby's heartbeat with their Doppler and checking my blood pressure. But everything was just really like soft, and like everybody was whispering, and not a lot of talking going on, just kind of letting me labor. And I felt really like the whole experience was really internal. Like, I just was so focused on my body opening. And I remember through each contraction, I was just like telling myself, open, you're opening up, like baby's going to be here. And it was really fast. I'll definitely say the labor was intense. But so anyways, we also had a birth tub that had to be filled up, and the midwives kind of had to get right to work on that, because I wanted to get in the water, but it took about 45 minutes to an hour to get set up and fill up. So my husband was helping out with that, but then checking in with me, and right around, I think 3:45 in the morning, they had the tub ready to go. And so I was ready to get in. We hadn't done any cervical checks since labor had started. But the minute I stood up, I could feel so much pressure. My midwife said, maybe go to the bathroom before you get in the water. And then we'll just see where things are at. And I went to the bathroom and sat on the toilet, and I was like, there is nothing coming out except for a baby. Like, I got to get most of the water. I felt like, no, this is something's happening soon. And so the minute my body hit the water, I know it's like, the midwife's epidural, because it was like, oh, that feels good. And then almost immediately after that, my water hadn't broken yet, but like my water, it was like the baby just dropped right into right into position. It was shocking. I could feel it. It was like, boom, I'm ready to push.
All right.
It was like, okay. And so I'm like, huh, okay, this is happening. I'm ready to push. And they're like, okay, all right. How about you give some pushes? And they're checking the heart rate, and things were good. So I started pushing, and like within 2 pushes, his head was out. And I could reach down and I could feel his head. And I just remember saying, oh, hi, baby. Hi, baby. It was a really cool feeling. Because I was on my knees, I could totally I could be right there. With my daughter, I was on my back. The hospital wanted me on my back pushing, and I just couldn't. I felt like I was more or less just kind of participating, where in this birth, I could feel everything, and I was fully prepared to catch him and lift him out of the water myself. But I started having trouble. Like the next 2 or 3 pushes, I just couldn't, in the position that I was in. For some reason, I just couldn't get him to come. So I told the midwife, I said, I think I need to change positions, because I've got his head, and they could see his head was out. I've got his head, but I can't seem like, I just can't. So we got into she said, get into a runner's position, lift your leg up. And once I got into that position, I told her, okay, you catch, you hand him to me.
Okay.
And so one more big push, and he was out, and he just kind of did a little swim, underneath my legs. And she said, there he is, catch your baby. And I couldn't see what was happening. She had a mirror underneath me with a flashlight, and it turns out that his cord, he was kind of stuck a little bit, and that was why we had to change positions, and he had to rotate a little bit. His cord was around his neck, and he actually had it was like a minor occult cord, which is a very minor prolapse of the cord. And I think that wasn't happening while I was laboring. It had to have happened when he dropped it, like when my water broke and when he dropped into position, because that was all just a really fast experience. And so this is kind of where things shifted for us, and it got a little serious, because he came out. This is the part where that what if something is wrong. He came out. I picked him up out of the water. The second midwife helped me a little bit, helped him get adjusted, and he was floppy. He was not really responsive. And so we're catching him. I'm excited. I'm in the moment. I'm like, oh, my baby. And the midwives go, okay, hang on. We're going to get a look at this baby. So we rotated him, and he gave a little sputter, but he was still floppy, which is not a good indicator of a baby that's doing well. And it actually, I was not panicked in this moment. And the reason that is because we did a catch class with the midwifery practice, where they explain what the grounds for neonatal resuscitation look like, and what happens in that situation. And I was really interested in that topic too. So I had, you can YouTube neonatal resuscitation too. And there's a lot of different videos that show you the signs and symptoms of what needs to happen. There is a Global Health Media Project that actually, the one that I stumbled upon, not for everyone, definitely trigger warnings in that video because it's a live study where this organization is, videoing live births,
Okay.
videoing neonatal resuscitation, and it did alarm me. Like at one point, they show neonatal resuscitation where the baby's not responding, which is super scary. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with that kind of stuff. I was comfortable with it because I felt like I was educating myself. But anyways, so I'm here I am in that moment with my baby where he's not doing great. And my mom was actually videoing the whole thing too. And I'm super grateful that she didn't turn off the camera, even though it looked scary, because the midwives were able to take that video and use it for educational purposes.
Oh, wow.
That is great.
Yeah. So they had this little floaty raft that they put in the birth tub with us, and he was able to lay right on that raft, and they were vocalizing what was happening too, which gave me comfort. Where immediately heart rate checked. They're like, okay, his heart rate is good. He's good at the umbilicus. We're just going to give him some breaths to help him out because it looks like he's making effort, but he needs a little help.
Okay.
And so we're giving him breaths with the resuscitation device. And he was responsive pretty quickly. Within about 30 seconds, he started to come around. His color changed, and we picked him up, and he sputtered. He just had to get a little bit of help being stimulated. The only regret I have in this scenario was that I educated myself really well on what to expect, but my husband did not. So it was a very scary moment for him where he, my doula, and this is also in our little home birth video, my doula is right there, and she's the one reassuring my husband. She's looking at him going, he's doing great. Like he's good. His respirations are coming around. You're okay. And then she also tells him, do you want to come closer, Matt? Like, do you want to come see? And my husband just kind of frozen in the background. He's like, no, I don't. What's happening? But yeah, so, and I just want to also point out that whether we were in the hospital or we were at home, the same steps would have been taken.
That's a great point to make.
There wouldn't have been any additional equipment that the hospital would have used versus what we did at the house. I think, honestly, if baby had come out the way he did at the hospital, I feel like there would have been more panic. They may have cut the cord and whisked him off.
Right.
So I was really grateful that we were right there all together, huddled around and getting him the breath that he needed. And he pinked up and everything was great, and they did explain, what a transfer would look like if baby wasn't doing great in the catch class. So I kind of knew in my mind, like, okay, if this baby's not going to pink up, we're going to go to the hospital right now. But we didn't have to. And we just didn't stay in the water. Like, we got out really quickly and got warm. So yeah, that was, that was educational for everybody. And I hope that, that part of it helps people understand what can happen. We got out of the bath, and, the next step is to birth the placenta and do all his checks and everything. I birthed my placenta pretty quickly afterwards, but once again, here I am, like, my midwife's like, okay, that's a little too much blood. We're going to do some pitocin. And I did feel a little lightheaded. So she just stuck me with some pitocin in my leg and said, this is what I'm doing. I don't like that blood. That's too much blood. So here we are.
Yeah.
And I was fine with that too. And we just kind of hung out for a couple hours. And, I kept baby on my chest. They did do their checks and made sure he was good and weighed him. I got up to do the bathroom thing, but I was just too I think I had lost a little too much blood because I immediately felt like I was going to pass out. So I laid back down and we just took it easy. And they taught me how to walk like a grandma to the bathroom for the first 24 hours. They're like, this is what you're going to do. You're going to get help. You're not going to get out of bed unless somebody is with you, and you're going to walk, bending at the waist down because we don't want you to fall. And you're depleted. So my mom stuck around. She made me the breakfast that I had asked for, which was Southern style biscuits and gravy.
Nice.
Very nice.
Yeah, my daughter had slept through the whole birth. We really were just leaving it up in the air on whether or not she was going to be there for it. We talked to her about it. We explained what was going to happen, but she rolled in around 5:30. He was born at 4:13, same time as her, and then she rolled in around 5:30. My husband got her up, and she got to meet her brother right there.
Wow,
that's so cool.
That is cool.
Baby is here,
What is this? Go to sleep, wake up.
What did she say when she first saw her brother?
She said, it's his birthday.
Aw.
That's
cute.
so cute.
But she knew that because we did a little happy birthday with a candle with some treats, and she got to eat a cookie for breakfast. And, ever since his birth, she's just been, right there, right up in it with me. She nurses her little lamb Lovey right next to me in the rocker. And I had to get used to that, with your second child. It's like, you're never alone.
Yeah.
There's someone always crawling on you. And I had to actively work on that part. I hate to say that, but it's like, I'm nursing the baby and she wants to be on my lap too.
Yeah.
And I had to adjust to that because part of me wanted to be like, I have one, you go do something else.
Right.
But I knew that, I wanted her to feel, like I didn't want her to get into that like jealous sibling mode where baby's replacing her. So we've just we've just gotten into the habit where she's always there when I'm nursing, when I'm putting him to sleep.
Yeah.
It started from the beginning.
I think that's great. I appreciate you sharing that, and even the kind of complexity of those emotions and everything that comes with it, because I know someone can relate to that. So I appreciate you sharing that and just being real with that. And I'm taking notes for myself. I'm putting on my list when we have another birth that someone brings a cake. When the for birthday purposes, but also just because cake. So that's on my. I'm gonna add that to the essential gear for a home birth now.
Noted.
Yeah.
Noted.
Cool. Yeah.
Jessica, I just love. I said this before we started the conversation that there were a couple of very key, high topic things here that have come up in our community a lot recently, and that's going past the due date, induction methods, possible resuscitation after birth, pitocin to manage the bleeding, all of that. And you were just able to break it down, delineate it, weave it into your story because it's your story. But then I feel like also you were that friend sitting across the table sharing for what I can take out of it, whether I'm going through similar things or I have fears around those things or it's a fear of my partners or whatever. So I really appreciate that sense that you were able to do that so well, share your experience, but then I feel like you were pulling these nuggets out for us along the way and kind of educating us throughout. So I really appreciate that aspect to your story, and I'm so excited to share it with everyone. Before we wrap up here, is there just any final words or advice or resource that you'd like to share with listeners?
Yeah. So I'll, my postpartum experience, I'll talk like really briefly on that, because I will say that was my favorite part of the midwifery model of care. So I advocate for them, even for if you're going to a hospital or birth center, for your birth, I still would say, look into home birth midwives for your postpartum care. Because it was just amazing. Not having to leave my house, not having to leave my bed. They gave me my midwife told me, you're going to be in this bedroom for 2 weeks. You need to stay in here. And she said, even if you're feeling good, even if you're feeling like you want to go to the kitchen, don't. Because the minute you leave this bedroom, everybody's going to think you're healed and you're not. So that I had to train myself, to not get up. It was really hard. My personality is get up and go. But they really educated me on just how important the first 6 weeks are with your healing process. So I focused a lot on my nutrition and, just eating well and staying in bed with the baby. That was huge for me. It's actually motivated me to help as many mom friends and moms in my community when it comes to that period, because I think sometimes, just culturally, we want to get back to normal. And even myself, like physically, I wanted to exercise and I did push myself too much. In my mind, I was thinking, back up to my daughter, 8 weeks postpartum, I was skiing. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was
Wow.
like, I'm good. I'm going to go skiing. And I did feel good, but like this baby's birth was a little bit harder on my pelvic floor. It was just harder on me physically to heal. So I would just say to mothers out there, like, be super gentle with yourself when you're healing and there's no timeline, it's not 6, it's not 8, it's not 12, it's not even 6 months later, I'm just starting to run again. So I have a little blog or not a blog. My sister helped me start an Instagram on food postpartum. So we're just kind of like experimenting with recipes. And anytime I have a mom friend that has a baby, I immediately am like, I'm bringing you lactation muffins. I'm bringing you a soup. I'm bringing you this. Like, these are the first 40-day foods that you should be eating to help your body heal. My bleeding stopped really early. I was not bleeding after 2 weeks. And I feel like that was because of the time that I laid in and rested and ate really healthy foods, organ meats, things like that, to just get my body's blood back and all those things. So that's really it for me. And I thank you guys so much for having me. I love your podcast. I love the space that you hold for people in this community.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much. And thank you for all your sharing. Your story was absolutely amazing. We appreciate you, Jessica.
Yeah, awesome. It was great to be here.
Quick note about the Doing It at Home podcast. Matthew and I are not doctors or medical professionals, and nothing we say should be taken as medical advice or opinion. If you have medical or health-related questions, please take them to a trained professional. We're here simply to entertain you with stories and conversations about pregnancy, birth, and parenthood.